Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day. I am sitting here to have a conversation with my friend, so I'm gonna invite her to introduce herself. Hey, who are you?
Hello, I'm Audrey Boss, and I'm an open floor teacher. I live in the UK in London, and I teach online and in person. I run workshops in the UK and retreats in Italy. And the way I use open floor is to blend it with the work that I've been doing for a while now, which is supporting people to feel differently about their bodies. So it's body image taken into movement, and I'm really enjoying and loving that. How about you? Who are you?
Who am I? Well, first of all, I enjoy and love what you do and admire it very much. So I hope we can talk about it during the course of our conversation. I am Majero Bouman, and I'm located in a little city called Sudbury in Ontario, Canada. And I'm an open floor teacher, and I teach online. And I moved to Sudbury just over a year ago, and I haven't started in-person classes here. I used to live in Toronto, where I taught in person. And I'm looking at space here in Sudbury in order to start some in-person work again, which I'm pretty excited about. I had a dream about in-person teaching last night. So it's really alive for me, and I'm looking forward to going back. I hope it's possible. And I do workshops, both online and in person in Canada and the US. I work with art and motion, and most particularly with language, because I have a long-standing relationship with words and meaning and unmeaning, how we make and unmake ourselves with and through language and sound, and how language and sound shape the body and movement in the world. So it bridges through cultural theory and philosophy and psychoanalysis. Yeah, enduring love's putting it all together. So that's me.
Hi, Mayaro. Well, I really
Hi.
enjoy what you do too. And I'm wondering, if you'd be willing to say a few words about how we met and how we haven't met yet.
Yeah, because it's hilarious. We were in the same cohort in our open floor teacher training, but Audrey did it in Europe and I did it in the US, and I couldn't afford to travel to Europe to do the trainings there, so I did all of my modules here. Well, not here, but in the US. So we never met. And then fast forward a few years, and the organization of Open Floor was inviting people to propose themselves to do webinars for teacher training. And at the beginning of our teacher training, we did this book called The Courage to Teach. And I know that I put my name forward to do The Courage to Teach because I used to teach literature in universities. And so I have a good way of understanding literature and of talking about ideas. So I figured I'd be able to work with that book. And when Open Floor got back to me, I learned that I was to do that webinar with this person, Audrey Boss. So Audrey and I think we made an appointment to meet on Zoom, and we met each other for the first time on Zoom because we'd been put together by the organization to do this work. And we took a little time to get to know each other, and I got kind of interested in Audrey and the work she was doing. And it really started out as a curiosity. Who is this person I'm going to work with? And then I think we started to try and talk about the book and how we were going to do this webinar. And what happened next, Audrey?
Well, it was quite funny because I think we met that once, and what we had in common was our movement practice. So we had the same language around movement and teaching and learning dance in this way. But really, apart from that, we didn't know each other at all. And I think when we first met, we had this idea that, we were going to sort of wham bam, get this webinar done and dusted in a few weeks. It was going to maybe take us, a couple of sessions working together. And what actually happened was that it took us 2 years to get it done. And in the meantime, over these 2 years, we ended up developing quite a friendship. It feels really odd to say this because we've never met in person and we've never moved together, which to me, it's always a surprise when I think about you in that way, because we've become such fast friends.
But it's not true that we haven't moved together, Audrey, because we've done each other's classes and we've assisted each other's classes. And I think that became part of the project as we were okay, first, when we recorded the first piece, the advertising piece for the webinar, which was just a travesty, but I think we had some joy that came out of how challenging it was to make this video recording. And then we realized maybe we need to understand each other a little more. And so we did each other's classes and assisted each other's classes and started to respect one another's teaching. And so we were moving together. It's just that we were online. We've never shared physical space in proximity, but we've shared physical space and movement practice online, because I have a sense of your body and I have a sense of how you move and the rhythms that are a part of you. And I think I know your comfort dance, and so I know some of your embodied patterns of being, and you probably know mine too.
That's true, actually. I do have quite an intimate knowledge of how you move. Having watched you, having moved with you, we've done a couple of groups together as participants. And yeah, we've assisted each other's classes.
Oh, and remember, we found out that we were both part of Sarah's art, I don't know what they were called. Dance Your Art Out classes on Zoom before the epidemic ever hit, the pandemic. And so we were actually in the same space already making art, but we didn't really know each other at that point.
We hadn't really connected or been in a breakout together or in a pod together. But I knew your name. Your name was there, in the ether. So yes, you're right. We have connected. We have moved together. And for anyone listening to this, for me, what moving with someone is sharing sweat, is sharing that space together, that opportunity to kind of co-regulate in person. And we've never really done that. I think what has brought us together is really geeking out over the theory of our movement practice and the theory of it and the how to teach it, because we had quite a few years working together on how to create a webinar, a teaching piece around this book called The Courage to Teach by Parker Palmer, which would be truly useful to movement teachers, right? Because actually Parker Palmer wrote this book with school teachers in mind, or academic teachers in mind, school and university teachers. But so much of what he says is relevant and transferable to any teaching profession. And we really wanted to make it really relevant and easy to access, because the book, let's face it, the book isn't the easiest read in the world. And we have so many students who are not English first language, right? We have so many trainees who don't have English as a first language. And so as we debated the finer points and we got really clear on how we wanted to structure that, we spent many hours really geeking out. I think that's the word. And I think that's what really helped us to bond a lot, was that common knowledge, that common practice that we have.
Yeah, we unpacked that book 6 ways from Sunday, just in so many different ways. And we came up with different ways of structuring the material and how could we make it not only accessible to people with the limited access to English, but also to different kinds of learning styles. Like, we didn't want to just talk it through, and we didn't want to just quote the book, because not everybody learns through listening and not everybody learns through reading, but some people are visual learners and some people are embodied learners. And so we started to really get into some good thoughts about how to take something that's in one dimension and break it up in a variety of different ways. And so we really did get to unpack some of those ideas. And what I think another piece there is that the book is about teaching as spiritual practice. And so we really got to dive into our own teaching practice and one another's teaching practice, and we run our classes, we class plan together as another layer of relationship. So we've been working on this book, and then we were also planning our classes, and we were talking about neurodiversity and learning styles and how to make stuff accessible to people who are embodiment teachers.
Yeah, it was that, for me, that was one of the most exciting parts of this project, to really consider the different ways in which people, what you said, in which people learn, but also the different ways in which we absorb and digest information, and also to make it practical, right? Because movement teachers, we wanted to make it accessible and practical for movement teachers, because some of the ideas in the Courage to Teach are quite universal or lofty, let's say, or philosophical. It's quite a philosophical book. And we wanted to see how we could bring the messages that were in the book right onto the dance floor and right into the movement practice. And that was really fun. And the feedback that we've had from some of the trainees who are taking this webinar as part of their training is that that's been really appreciated.
Yeah.
The fact that it's really visual, and the fact that they can just listen to the audio without having to use their eyes necessarily. And then we structured it so that each section of the webinar has a movement exploration, right? A creative inquiry and a movement exploration. And so being able to take that right into movement, I think, is really helpful. I was going to say helpful for some people, but I think helpful probably for all people who are interested in teaching. That was really fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more with you, Majero.
Me too, Audrey. I did wait, but before we go to what, to the more that we're imagining and dreaming ourselves toward, I also want to reflect on the aspect of the Courage to Teach, which is revolutionary. And Parker Palmer, the author of that book, really talks about teaching and learning as a revolutionary practice. What he's inviting in is a paradigmatic shift in relationships to one another within a teaching community as well as within communities at large. And he unpacks how that works in parts of the book, particularly I think the last chapter or the last two chapters. And so what we structured when we did this work is that we identified these two cultures, the culture of competition and the culture of courage. And the culture of courage is really about brave, self-responsible, collaborative practice, where we have brave conversations and where we practice vulnerability in community with our peers as well as with our students, and how this in itself offers a cultural revolution where we're shifting out of a colonial capitalist mentality of like it's me or you. I have to be better than you, or you're better than me, so I'm gonna, submit to your authority in some way. But instead, how can we co-develop authority together by testing our ideas out in public? And that kind of bravery, I think, is one of the things that invited us toward one another in our own, like, we need to be a part of one another's teachings. We need to sit in each other's classes. We need to talk about what worked and what didn't work within the teaching of embodiment and the culture of being a teacher and a peer. And that's really important to me, because I think that that's also one of the things that's been reflected back in the uptake of the book and the uptake of the webinar that we created, is that culture of courage and how it mobilizes relationships between teachers is of critical importance, and not just teachers within the same modality, but teachers within different modalities, and how we can support and enrich one another's practice rather than compete for territory and knowledge, like I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that forward because it's meaningful. It's meaningful to
Yeah,
me.
it is meaningful. And that's kind of why we chose this as a point of, discussion for this podcast, right? Because we met a while ago to talk about, what are we going to talk about for the ICMTA podcast? And one idea we had was cakes, because we are both mad keen bakers and eaters of cake. And we have shared many cake eating sessions over Zoom over the past 2 years.
And recipes.
And recipes. And I think actually what we wanted to talk about this, didn't we? Because this is what the ICMTA is. It brings together teachers from different modalities in a culture of courage, in a culture of collaboration, rather than a culture of competition.
Yeah.
And that's also, I think, why we both wanted to train, or what attracted us so much to Open Floor, the fact that it was a collaborative effort, coming together of so many minds. Like, the curriculum is so rich and so vast because it comes from so many different perspectives. There were 4 founding members, 4 founders, 15 founding members. That's a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of expertise coming in from so many different modalities and ways of learning and teaching.
Yeah, it's a body trust.
It's a body trust. I'll say more about body trust. I like that.
I was thinking of brain trust, and I was like, it's not just a brain trust. It's not like a place where everybody's brain goes together, but it's a place where we come with all the dimensions of our embodiment and our knowledge and our expertise and our experience, and put it to good use together.
There's something about community, isn't there? I'm sure so many people have heard this, and I'm not sure who it was who said it. I think it might be the actual Dalai Lama said the next Dalai Lama might be a community.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before. I was also thinking of something that I heard like in my first ground floor lab. And I don't know if somebody said it or if it was on the wall somewhere, but if it was like a proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, to go together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And coming from an academic setting, which was highly competitive and very insecure at its core. It was a weird dynamic of insecurity and competition. Coming into this group of like really courageous, collaborative idea making was
Yeah.
like, oh yes, this is a good place. And now here we are, years later, never having met,
But knowing each other intimately.
knowing intimate details of our children's lives and one another's lives,
Yeah.
and meeting up online and working together on whatever we're doing at the time. So that's useful. Why don't you tell us about what is next? What are we thinking about?
Well, we enjoyed doing this webinar, creating this webinar together so much. We're hoping that we are going to get to do some more. So in the open floor teacher training, there's a book for each phase of the training, a recommended reading. And when we did the training, you either read the book or you didn't read the book. And so this is why we decided in this round of training to make that more accessible, and so provide a webinar which kind of pulls out the key themes of the books that are recommended, and as we discussed earlier, really makes it accessible and practical within the context of teaching movement. And so The Courage to Teach was the book that was selected for phase 1 of the teacher training. And the next book I am insanely excited about because it's Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. And we're hoping that we'll get picked, because we have to submit a proposal for that.
We'll make a proposal.
So we'll make a proposal for that, and hopefully we'll get to do a little bit more. I love Brene Brown. I think she has a beautiful way with words, and has so much to say about compassion and vulnerability, which kind of ties in really well with the themes that came out of Parker Palmer's book. Another big piece that we chose was that idea of the perfect teacher, right? The idea that as a teacher, we have to show up on our dance floors as invulnerable, as totally perfect
and knowledgeable.
Knowing everything, and with that, and what happens when we do that is there's a distancing that happens between ourselves and our students. It's, Parker Palmer, he talks about when we see the student as a container to be filled with knowledge, what we're not doing is that relational piece, right? When we're forgetting that we can learn from our students, we're forgetting that there are different ways of seeing the world, so that when we impose our own way of understanding something, we're kind of negating that our students have their own experience of the world, their own stories, that they may be sensing the world in a different way. And so that ties in really well with Brene Brown and her Atlas of the Heart. And we're not sure yet, but we think that the book in phase 3 might be When the Past is Present. I can't
By
remember.
David Rico. David
Oh,
Rico.
thank you,
It's
David
such a
Rico.
good book. And I just want to say, like, whether we get chosen by Open Floor to do these webinars or not. Audrey and I have talked about, what are the possibilities of making philosophy or complex psychology books available in an embodied way. And so it's not just for the Open Floor teacher training, but for embodiment teachers at large, somatic practitioners, taking ideas and putting them into movement is, I think, something that excites us both. And there's a lot of great work out there that we could take, and David Rico's When the Past is Present is one of those. Before we pressed go on this recording, Audrey said, listen to this. This is a nice thing. What was it, Audrey? Something about the mind can be anywhere.
Something about the mind can be anywhere instantly, and the body is only in one place at a time, here and now.
Yeah.
And then we went off on this big philosophical discussion, didn't we, about how that really separated mind and body, how the idea that the mind was somehow separate from the body. The body is like somehow a brain taxi, just carries this kind of,
and it's always here now, and the mind can be anywhere. And actually we recognize that actually the body is filled with different anachronies. It's filled with different times, with our genetic and epigenetic inheritance of trauma, pattern, relationality, culture. We enact a lot of different times in a singular body and movement. And I think that as movers on a dance floor, we know that so intimately, with the kinds of memories that can come up with the moving of a body part or a pattern or a position. It unlocks so much memory and experience and dream and creativity. So all of that is just to say that whether we do this with Open Floor or not, I'm still really excited about the idea of continuing the project that we started, because I'm so passionate about it. I think it's so worthwhile. And not, you know what, and for university students as well, more and more, philosophy professors, cultural professors, people who are working with decoloniality, are recognizing the centrality of the body and embodiment to what they do. I think that we're in the middle of an embodied turn where the body is becoming forefront in how we understand our belonging to greater ecosystems.
Yeah.
Because
ecosystems and political systems, right? There's something about, I was teaching a workshop last week actually about body image, and there's a narrative, there's an idea in the self-help or the mindfulness or the self-development world at the moment, where if you just work hard enough, if you just get enough therapy, if you just find the right movement practice, if you just put in enough effort to fix yourself, then you can feel better about yourself. And of course, that totally negates that we live in bodies that live in a political reality where certain bodies have privilege and other bodies don't and are discriminated against, right? So I can work really hard individually on myself to feel more confident about myself, to feel better about myself, to banish my body image demons. But actually, if I'm showing up in a body where I have less access to healthcare or less employment opportunities, or where even I'm finding it difficult to integrate communities because of the way I look, maybe the color of my skin or the size of my body or my ability or my age, no amount of self-development is going to help with that.
Yeah.
And our body, not only that, but actually it's not even just about us in the here and now. Like, our bodies carry the history of our families, of our lineage. So there's this, I think it's Resmaa Manneken talks about in My Grandmother's Hands, which is an excellent book, which I would love to do a webinar for movement teachers with you about. So in his book, he talks about how the genetic markers of trauma can go back 8 generations. That's a long time. And so on this workshop that we were doing last week, we were looking at how, when I work mostly with women and non-binary people, so people who identify as women or non-binary. So we were talking about how when our mothers were in our grandmother's womb, so when our grandmothers were pregnant and our mothers were in their womb, we were also there already.
Physically,
Right?
as eggs, right?
Physically as eggs.
Yeah.
So you have 3 generations in one body. And, if you go back 100 years, in the past 100 years or so, let's say that's more or less 3 generations, we're looking at wars, we're looking at famine, we're looking at a much more violent world, certainly where women were concerned, domestic abuse and just simply the disempowerment of the female body. And so looking at how we carry that as well with us, it's not just, how I grew up, the circumstances that I grew up in, the body that I was given at birth and what that represents in the world out there, but also we're carrying so much more than that. I have no idea how we got onto this conversation.
Well, and I'm just thinking about, the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the US and the condition of women's bodies right now as public property is, wildly alarming, to say the least. But I'm not going to launch into I'm not going to launch into a political discussion, because I think I think we've been talking for about 25 minutes, and I want to ask you, when are we going to meet? Audrey?
When are we going to meet?
Because I'm just going to say this, that I'm getting married at the end of the summer, and I invited Audrey to come to my wedding. She's not coming. I thought we could finally meet on a dance floor and do some wedding dancing, but she's not coming. So when are we going to meet?
Well, I would have loved to be at your wedding. Like, what a fantastic opportunity it would have been to meet like that. And unfortunately, this summer is just not going to be possible. So we need to keep on talking about how we're going to meet on the dance floor, because I think what we didn't say is that we meet most days to work together. So we switch Zoom on, we both work from home, which can be a little bit lonely and isolating sometimes. So we meet up after my lunch and after your breakfast, Majero. We switch on Zoom, we say hi, we have a little check-in, and then we work in 45-minute stints.
Yeah, we co-work.
We co-work, which is really lovely. And so as we've been co-working in these last months in our little check-ins, it's been like, so when are we going to meet? What dance floor are we going to meet on? I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to it. I think
suggested Italy. Oh, we said 18 months, right? We gave ourselves a timeline, 18 months.
So we have 18 months.
We should do another one of these. We'll do another podcast interview thing after we've met.
Oh, that would be great.
What's going to be really funny is that I'm really big, like I'm tall, and Audrey's actually quite small, but on Zoom you don't get that size situation. So we regard one another in a very particular way spatially, and I think when we meet in real physical shared space, that's going to be something that's going to be weird. Like, we're going to go and give each other a hug, and it's going to be like, oh, you're so little.
So
Or
you
maybe
see
not.
that.
I don't know.
So you see, there has been a real meeting of minds, and the bodies haven't quite met yet. They've met through the ether a little bit, but they haven't quite met yet. So one of the things I'm most looking forward to is really is sharing a hug with you.
You know what though? I don't want to run to it. I want to like, I think it would be great if we could just meet on a dance floor and dance our way, like feel ourselves. Wouldn't that be beautiful to feel ourselves in the same room
Yeah,
and just, you know, how your body kind of acclimatizes to another's, like how your feet hit the floor and how the movement of your arms and legs and body work together. And then so our dances can correspond, like we can meet each other in movement and then find our way toward one another. That'd be really fun. We'll do
I
it in
think
an
that would
airport
be
somewhere.
amazingly fun. And I'm just a little bit sorry that this is audio and not video, because people have missed out on seeing you like waving and weaving as you described that. You look like I don't know, an anemone or an octopus. It was
That's just because I'm long and large.
so graceful.
An octopus.
Does that sound like a good place to stop, octopus? I have no idea.
Yeah, I think so. I
Well,
think so.
it's been a real pleasure chatting with you today
It always
and
is, Audrey.
reminiscing about, you know, how we met and what we might be, and then also plotting and planning what we might be doing in the future. I'm really looking forward to working more on that with you. Like, how do we bring big philosophical and ideas from the world of psychology into a language and in a format that's really accessible by everyone, especially movement teachers. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, because it's all, I mean, I just want to say about how it's all connected. You know, it's also important that these not just intercultural, but multimodal discourses are coming together.
Yeah.
And I think that in the course of our multi-year relationship now, we've found a good way to do that. And I look forward to doing more.
Yeah,
So
go
thank you.
alone, go fast, go together, go
Go
far,
slow.
right?
Go together, go slow.
Well, certainly we went slow.
But we did real good.
Real good.
All right, Audrey, thank you so much.
Thank you.